this whole thing about personal branding, the term really irritates me because, what is branding? What is it? I asked this question last night to a group of students, marketing students, and I got 3 different answers. Right? How can you have a word that has so little meaning be meaningful? It's really hard. So what I'm proposing is actually, it's not personal branding, but it's personal positioning. Does that make sense? Because positioning means, how are you different from everyone else? How is Dunkin' Donuts coffee different from Starbucks coffee? There's a feeling, there's a difference. So when we talk about personal positioning, it's really about what makes you uniquely qualified from your experiences, your values, your passions, right? And even your education and your network to solve somebody else's problem. Okay? And the reason why we talk about this first is that a lot of people think, because I think I've convinced a lot of you that if you didn't have a LinkedIn profile now, that you're probably going to go and do that. Is that fair? Yeah, a lot of heads are nodding. Yeah, I'm probably going to get a LinkedIn profile this week. Probably should, based on some of these statistics. But here's my word of warning. Don't just fill that out because there are blanks. Don't just grab your resume and paste it in there. Because what happens is that there are inconsistencies that can emerge. The picture that you've cropped out of last year's Hawaii vacation isn't exactly what you look like now. Or it doesn't convey the same kind of emotion that you wanted to convey to potential hiring manager. So Mark Zuckerberg got on stage, and he is making his company go public within a week or so. I think I read that this morning, for somewhere between 80 and 90 billion dollars. Yet here's a picture of Mark Zuckerberg in his dorm room in Harvard with a hashtag. Okay? Inconsistencies on your online presence can really kill your chances to find a job. It doesn't take a lot. It just takes one. That's why recruiters are out there looking. They're Googling your name. They're out there on Facebook. They want to find reasons to say no. And once they find one, you wind up in the maybe pile. And that's why thinking about your personal brand before you fill out this stuff is so important. So for those of you taking notes, that first mistake is, let's think about our brands first. Then let's fill out our LinkedIn profile. Let's figure out what our positioning is first. How do we talk about ourselves? What colors represent our personality? Yeah. So that first mistake, let's dive into that a little bit. I want to present to you a model, a framework that I've used for personal branding that's extremely effective. Really because a lot of personal branding literature just talks about who you are. Let's do some values elicitation, let's do some skills management, let's figure out what your passions are, where you fit. But there's another half to personal branding, and that is what their problem is. Anyone been in a sales job before here? So if there's no need, if you haven't identified customer need, isn't it really hard to sell? Oh yeah. Well, maybe you were in retail. Or in Starbucks. Yeah, so selling yourself, right, which is a term I don't like, but really, in order to get someone's attention, you have to be able to identify what their need is. Because we all sort of walk around thinking about what our problems are, including the hiring managers who have the power and influence to hire us. So we need to combine who we are with what their problems are. Okay? That's a framework that we're going to use over and over again. When you're writing your LinkedIn headline, you're going to think about, who am I in the context of the problem that I solve? When you're writing your profile summary, who am I in the context of the problems I solve for the target organization? Okay? So who are you? Who are you? Who are you? There's a lot of ways to ask that question. But really what we want to get to are your values and your drives, your passion. Many of you have worked with the Career Center here and have taken some value solicitation programs, have taken some assessments, right? Here's one that I find really easy to do. If you want to do this right now or when you go home, I challenge you to really look inside and ask yourself these questions. Go ahead and name 3 people who you admire the most. They could be historical, fictional, family. 3 people you admire the most. Write down their names, the top 3. Right? And then ask yourself, what was it that these people were willing to sacrifice to achieve what they achieved? what did they sacrifice to achieve what they achieved? Because values are something that we're all willing to sacrifice something for. Let's say that you identify that one of your values is sustainability, okay? And one of the people on your list is maybe someone in the environmental movement, okay? So for you, sustainability is really important. And you get this amazing job offer, $1 million job offer from an oil company looking for the next place to drill. Now, if you know your values are for sustainability, you're very easily going to be able to sacrifice that, and say, no, thanks. That's totally against who I am. And that's a very easy decision. Wouldn't you agree? But if you haven't gone through the process of figuring this out, that could be a very painful week of writing down the pros and cons, figuring out if, how much money you make, how soon you can get out of it, the guilt, right? So figuring out your values is so important in making those decisions in your career. I really challenge everybody here to take some time and figure that out. Now the next part is figuring out what the problems are of your target organization. Notice they said target organization. A lot of times we just sort of go out to the job boards and see where opportunities arise. But what I'm challenging you here today to do is to say, look, who would you love to work for right now? Do you have a top 10 list? How many people in here actually have a top 10 list of target companies? That's really good. I applaud all of you who raised your hand. Yeah. Because if you don't know who you're targeting, then how are you going to know what problem you're solving? And if you don't know what problem you're solving, how can you position yourself as a solution to that problem? How can you differentiate yourself, ergo have personal positioning? Okay? So a great website that you might want to write down is called Alltop. Alltop is human curated news and opinion based on some of the top blogs and news sites around the internet. So human beings actually go out to these blogs and news sites and they find the best or most relevant news stories so that you don't have to. This, hanging out here on Alltop, within your industry, within your space, within your areas of interest, for a week, I guarantee you're going to have an enormous amount of insight to bring to the table. Okay? So I challenge you to do that as well. Spend some time up front researching the companies, researching the industry that you are passionate about going into. Okay. So how does all of this translate into LinkedIn? Because that's a little bit woo-woo, right? That's sort of, there's no results yet. You've just done a little bit of introspection and a little bit of industry research, right? So this translates into LinkedIn in many powerful ways. Now, just so that I can get a sense of how many people already have profiles, can you raise your hand if you already have a profile? How many of you don't? Okay, so probably about a third to a quarter of you don't yet. Most of you are going to recognize this screen. This is your headline. Okay. What happens is a lot of people think, all right, so LinkedIn is just sort of my resume online. And actually it's not. So instead of copying and pasting your job title, which usually comes here, why don't you think about this, right? Wouldn't you rather be the second one? I help companies generate revenue through product innovation and go-to-market planning. You can either be that or you can just be VP of marketing. You have 120 characters here to really get that headline out there to sell your stuff. Yeah. Nike can sell shoes in 3 words. Car companies can sell cars in 20 seconds or less. You can sell yourself in 120 characters. You see, this is probably the hard, even though it's so short, it's probably the hardest part of your LinkedIn profile. When someone came up to Mark Twain and asked him to write an article for the newspaper, he delivered a 5-page article. They got back to him and he said, you know what, Mark? Well, that wasn't his real name, it was Samuel. He said, you know what, Samuel? This is a newspaper. We need a 1-page article from you. So Mark Twain quips back. He says, then it's double the price. Writing shorter, more concisely, is a lot harder than writing long. So this 120-character space is going to be the hardest thing to do. Don't just rush through it to fill out the blank. Okay? Take some time to figure out what's that message. How can I position myself so that I'm getting that personality across, that uniqueness across? Does that make sense to everybody?